Welcome back to the Deep Dive, a low-effort podcast. Today we're going to be doing Robocop, a Paul Verhoeven film, starring Peter Weller, Nancy Allen, and Kurtwood Smith.
Welcome back, everyone. Today we are diving deep into a classic, and honestly, when you first brought this one up, I was like, Robocop. What more is there to say?
Yeah.
But boy, was I wrong.
I know, right? It's a classic for a reason, and the source material you dug up is fantastic. Analyses, trivia, behind-the-scenes stuff. It's clear we're not just talking about a cyborg cop here.
You hit the nail on the head. It goes way deeper than that. And it's funny you say cyborg cop because that prep work Peter Weller did for the role blew me away. That article you shared about his training.
Oh, intense.
Intense is right. Months with a mime artist. Just to move like a machine.
A total immersion. He wanted to embody that struggle, of being a man trapped inside technology.
Which makes what you were saying about the suit even crazier. That story's nuts.
Oh man, can you imagine? You spend months honing these movements, getting it perfect, and then bam, the suit's so restrictive you practically have to start over.
It's insane, right? I'd be furious.
Yeah.
Talk about dedication, though. I mean, he could easily just phoned it in, but no, he stuck with it and created something iconic.
Exactly. Because it wasn't just a costume, it was crucial to the character. Think about it. Murphy's literally imprisoned by this technology, fighting to reclaim himself. And that's where the brilliance of the filmmaking comes in, right?
Totally, especially when you consider they didn't have a massive budget to work with, and yet they still created these unforgettable visuals, like ED-209. Come on.
It's such a great example of limitations fueling creativity. Stop motion, can you believe it? They moved that model frame by frame painstakingly.
I know, which seems kind of counterintuitive, right? I mean, you've got this super sleek, futuristic corporation, OCP, but their big enforcer is brought to life with this old school animation technique.
And that's the genius of it. Choosing stop motion wasn't just about the budget. It emphasized the fact that technology can be clunky and flawed. Like, look at ED-209. It makes you question OCP's whole better future spiel.
Well, yeah, when their creations are so
hilariously inept.
Exactly. It's satire at its best.
A best.
And it's not just ED-209. Those fake ads you found, I mean, wow. Hilarious.
Right. Talk about hitting the nail on the head, and not just back then, even now.
It's true. They really nailed it with those, especially, what was that one called again? Nukem? Something like that?
Nukem, yes. The board game for families about nuclear war. So good.
So good, but also kind of messed up when you really think about it.
Exactly. And that's what Robocop does so well, using humor to make us confront these really uncomfortable truths. We laugh, but then it's like, hold on a second.
For sure. It's that whole, it's funny because it's true thing, but with some real weight behind it.
Which brings me to something else I was thinking about, this idea that Robocop's way more than just an action movie, right? Like, it tackles some really complex stuff.
Absolutely.
It really does.
And for me, it all comes back to Murphy and his whole struggle. Like, what does it even mean to be human? His memories are gone. His body's been completely rebuilt.
Yeah, right.
But that core part of him, that drive for justice, that's still there. And that ties into the whole corporate conspiracy thing too, doesn't it? It's not just about one guy's identity. It's about how these corporations, these OCPs of the world, want to control us. Every single aspect of our lives.
That's such a good point. And all that research you sent about the film's production really gets into that. This was the 80s, the era of deregulation, when big corporations were really starting to flex their muscles.
Totally.
People were already anxious about that. And Robocop just tapped into those fears perfectly.
It's wild to think about. They take something like law enforcement, something that should be for the people, and just hand it over to a private company.
And not just any company, but OCP. And what do we see? They're way more concerned with profit and power than actually serving and protecting anyone.
Yeah, and the film does not shy away from those consequences either.
Not at all.
Delta City. Their whole plan to just bulldoze Detroit and rebuild it in their image. I mean, come on, that's terrifying.
It really is, and it speaks to this whole idea of corporate utopianism, the belief that they know better, even if it means completely reshaping our world. But what about the people who actually live there? What happens to them?
They're just casualties, right? Just collateral damage in the name of progress. It's crazy how relevant that feels today, even after all these years.
It is. We're still dealing with these same questions, about the power of corporations, the role of technology, what defines us as human beings. And that's what makes Robocop so powerful. It's more than just explosions and one-liners.
Way more. It's funny. Before we started this deep dive, I have to admit, I pretty much thought of Robocop as like Action-packed, quotable lines, for sure.
Yeah.
But now I'm seeing all those headlines, robotic security patrols, companies buying up whole sections of cities, and it's like, are we living in some kind of Robocop prequel or something?
Right. Like, it's more than just, oh, that's a funny coincidence. The stuff you dug up about the film's impact, how it's had this whole life beyond the screen. Robocop really did tap into something real. That fear of what happens when we just hand over the reins to technology. That hasn't gone away. It's just morphed.
Totally. It's like a straight line from those gritty streets in the film to, I don't know, those super sleek techie dystopias you see in shows like Black Mirror, right?
Right.
Like, it's all about those consequences you don't see coming, that human cost of supposed progress.
It's true. And speaking of impact, I mean, we can't talk about RoboCop's legacy without talking about cyberpunk, right? The visuals, the themes, even just the sound of it, it's all there in those later movies like The Matrix.
Oh, yeah.
Wild to think a movie about a cyborg cop from way back in 87 could have this kind of staying power.
It makes you wonder, though, how come those sequels, even that remake, they could never quite bottle that same magic?
True.
They had the technology, bigger budgets, but something was always off.
I think that's the thing with any great piece of art, though. It captures a feeling, a specific moment, like a snapshot of what people were worried about then.
Yeah.
Hard to recreate that, even with all the special effects in the world. What resonated with people back in 87, that fear of corporations running wild, trying to hold on to what makes us human when everything's becoming tech, it's still relevant today, just different.
That makes it's all about the context, right? RoboCop's like a time capsule, but one with a big warning sign slapped on it for the future.
Exactly. And it's a warning we should probably pay attention to, maybe.
Yeah. So, to bring it all back around to those headlines we were talking about, all this talk about corporations, after this deep dive, I gotta ask, you really think it could happen? A real-life RoboCop scenario. You know, companies calling the shots on stuff like law enforcement. Is that even possible?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
And honestly, if I had a simple answer, I'd probably be like, I don't know, a billionaire CEO or something. What I do know is that RoboCop is like this giant reminder to, you know, pay attention, ask questions about what role tech plays in our lives, and never forget that there are real people behind all those algorithms and profits.
I couldn't have said it better myself. This has been amazing, by the way. Really got me thinking.
Good.
And for everyone listening, if you want to dig into any of the stuff we talked about today, we've got links to all the articles, everything in the show notes.
Yeah.
So until next time, keep learning, keep asking questions, and hey, maybe, just maybe, we can avoid that whole dystopian future thing.